Number 5. Flying cigars. Okay, so the first piece of footage we're going to take a look at today is this amazing footage of a cylindrical UFO that's got even the skeptics and the experts scratching their heads watching. Now, you come take a look and see if this makes you a true believer. You can see pretty clearly, unlike most UFO footage, there is something very strange in clear view. Now, we see a lot of videos or stories about cylindrical UFOs, but we don't often get to see them so up close, so stabilized, so enhanced until this beautiful little clip. Now, there's a couple things going on here that make this clip a little shinier than the average clip. For one, we can see the objects going behind the clouds, some low visibility there. The object shimmers with a metallic surface. It looks seamless, as if it's one solid capsule or a big giant pill. But most interestingly to me, it doesn't show any sign of propulsion. No trail of smoke, no exhaust, no big old rocket on the back. So what is driving it forward? The object is seen making multiple sharp turns at very, very high speeds, instant acceleration. So whatever is making it move is tremendously powerful. Perhaps there's some sort of fantastic anti-gravity technology that's keeping it up in the air. Now, the original uploader said that this object, despite its incredible speed, made no sonic boom, when it definitely should have been. Viewers who are significantly better with numbers than me suggest that the object is going around 1,800 kilometers per hour. So what do you think, my dear sweet viewers? Is this some of the most compelling footage of a UFO in a while, or is this big strange pill craft just a big pill to swallow? You let me know down below. And if you're looking for way more alien content, well, you already know the Top 5 Scary has some of that and then some. We have got boxes and boxes full of alien videos for you to peruse and enjoy. But if alien videos aren't your jam, we've got a video on just about everything scary under the sun and above it. So click on through, make sure you hit subscribe, please hit that little bell, but do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got 4 more alien sightings coming for you right now. Number 4, the mysterious triangle. Now, it wouldn't be a proper list of mysterious UFO sightings without a classic sighting of a triangular black UFO. If you're a regular enthusiast of UFO content, you probably recognize that black triangle UFOs are one of the most repeated sightings, right after those cylindrical cigar-shaped Tic Tac UFOs we just covered. Now, this next clip you're about to see was sourced from TikTok by the account TR3B Black Manta YT and was stabilized and enhanced by other members of the UFO community to highlight the clip, and we're glad they did, because this is about to blow your mind. Take a look. Now, a very popular conspiracy theory in the sort of UFO stratosphere is that the existence of these black triangular crafts are traced back to a purported top secret aircraft developed by the US military, codenamed as the TR-3 Black Manta, hence the name of the TikTok account we sourced this from. Now, the alleged Black Manta is a classified stealth reconnaissance plane capable of vertical takeoff and landing, as well as extraordinary maneuverability. It's believed that it's got supremely advanced propulsion systems and radar evading technologies, allowing it to operate undetected. Now, believers in this theory state that sightings of black triangular UFOs are sightings of this classified aircraft, and that the government uses UFO conspiracies as a way to divert attention away from their covert operations. Now, not to get too tinfoily, but that sounds incredibly likely. There are some who believe as well that the TR-3 could be proof of a UFO, implying that the craft was reverse engineered from downed or otherwise recovered alien technology. Obviously, the government isn't going to outright confirm or deny anything vis-a-vis aliens, especially any top secret black ops level secrets, so officially the government has denied any involvement about a possible TR-3 Black Manta project. So what do you think, my viewers? Are these sightings of black triangle UFOs sightings of advanced military technology from this world or from someone else's? Number 3, the lights over Vegas. Coming up next today on this list is going to be this strange footage out of Las Vegas. Sometimes what happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas and blows up the internet, like this series of mysterious bright lights that hovered above the city for hours, being seen by countless people, and yet no one seems to be able to figure out what it was. Now, often the bright glow of something like this could be traced to flares or aviation training. That was the hypothesis put forward by the local news station that aired this clip, suggesting it could be activity from Nellis Air Force Base, Creech Air Force Base, or Harry Reid International. When someone from the station reached out to Nellis, a spokesperson told the station that no training was conducted over the valley the previous night, and a similar statement was was made by Harry Reid International. But come on, I don't need you to be a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist to tell you that the government is not going to own up to that. Even if you caught them with a big, clear, crisp photo of an alien craft, they'd still say they had nothing to do with that. It doesn't seem overly likely that if the government was conducting clandestine ops, they'd be so forthright in telling people about them anyway, so still an option, I'd say. Moving forward, the person who filmed these mysterious lights said that he's a local to the Strip, and that he said that these lights looked unlike anything he had ever seen before up in the sky there. Much bigger and brighter than any tourist helicopters or the usual glitz and lights and attractions from the Vegas skyline. The lights apparently burned really brightly for about 5 minutes or so, and then vanished again as they appeared. Now, the areas around Las Vegas are ripe for conspiracy, what with Area 51 being pretty close by. Could it be possible that these lights we saw were in fact high-tech military technology? Could they be reverse engineered alien technology? Or could it just be a bunch of geese that all had Christmas lights wrapped around them? We may honestly never know. Number 2, the flying saucer over Phoenix. Coming up next today in our collection of UFO footage collected by average Joes on the ground is this sighting from Phoenix, Arizona of what looks to be a pretty clear-cut flying saucer flying sideways through the sky. Now, we've seen a cylinder, we've seen a triangle, and we've seen a series of strange floating lights, so I think it's high time that we round out the collection of UFO footage by adding in a flying saucer, the most classic of all UFO sightings. You close your eyes, you imagine a UFO, you probably imagine a little flying saucer, a little glass bubble, a little green guy in there. In this clip, we can see some vaguely disc, saucer-like effigy hurtling through the sky at a rapid speed. Now, unfortunately, this clip is a bit older and came at a time before 4K cameras were the norm, and so we can downright count the pixels on the screen. It's like a vintage throwback. It's hard to make out exactly what's happening in the clip, and the details of it are a bit muddled. It would be great to be able to see the craft in more detail and make out some of the individual elements of it just to prove or disprove anything. More than a few commenters when this clip was posted suggested that it could just be a balloon, which would definitely be a bit of a bubble burster. I feel like a balloon is the answer to 99.9% of all UFO sightings. It's just a strange balloon that got loose. Now, I can see some elements of that in some shots. The craft looks like it's reacting to the wind more than it does being blown around rather than soaring through the sky. As well, there's no visible exhaust or method of propulsion shown, but it could be possible that whatever entity was piloting that craft has technology above and beyond what we could ever dream of and has no need for propulsion. So what do you think? Proof of an alien civilization scouting out the planet caught on camera by someone looking up at just the right time? Or is this just a balloon that needs some hot air let out of it? And number 1, the balls of fire in La Plata. And finally, coming in at the number 1 spot today in this list of amateur alien auteur films is this strange footage captured recently in La Plata, Argentina. 2 fireballs were seen hovering in the sky, which is that's pretty odd, all things considered. They appeared seemingly out of thin air in the night sky and remained hovering in place for 5 minutes or more. It's strange that 5 minutes seems to be the key amount of time that fireballs hang up in the sky. At the time of the sighting of the fireballs, there were no storms, it's a clear night, and these fiery red flares light up the night sky like they're gigantic evil eyes staring down at us. Very imposing. We could see tons and tons of people coming out to take photos and gawk and try to figure out what was happening, so this isn't a one-off camera glitch or someone getting crafty with CGI. We've got loads of eyewitnesses accounting for this. Now, some skeptics have suggested that this could be rocket vapor or something left over from a Starlink operation. Now, maybe it's because I'm not a rocket scientist, I'm just a YouTube host, sort of, but I'm not convinced. Many reports flooded in around this one particular incident, with residents all describing them as shining fireballs in the night sky. Well, local government tried to come forward with an explanation, believing that it came from a petrochemical plant, with the leading explanation being that the flames were from 2 catalytic units in the plant, causing a flare for a short period of time. Now, despite that being the official story, there are of course still some skeptics who think that's just a convenient cover-up to prevent local residents from getting their hands too close to the actual truth, with some locals claiming they've seen lights from the plant before and they're never that bright or that high up in the night sky. So, like all the other ones, I will leave it up to you. These mysterious balls of flame, something about aliens or something not about aliens? It really could be either one of those options or nothing. Anyway, something to consider. Number 5, the USS Omaha. Coming up first today on our list of unexplained UFO sightings on camera is going to be this wild footage taken off the coast of San Diego from on board the Navy ship USS Omaha. The video footage was shot on an FLIR camera, which is an incredibly expensive, fancy bit of tech. It's a thermal camera to detect heat. It's perfect for this sort of thing. And if you want one for yourself, civilians can buy these cameras. They cost $300,000. That's about 1 month's rent in Toronto. Very fair. In the footage, we can see what looks to be a sphere-like object flying over the ship before entering the water. The Omaha claimed that for days before this incident was recorded, they were seeing drone-like objects flying around their ship that the crew had no knowledge of. This footage was taken from a crew member trying to ascertain what it was that they were dealing with. Now there is some audio on the clip and it's illuminating. When the object goes into the water, we hear the sailors say mark, bearing, and range, meaning that the sailors on the ship were making a note of the coordinates and location where it went in, suggesting that maybe a submarine was sent in to recover or discover whatever was going on in there. Did it even submerge in the water, or does it seem a bit too like the craft outright disappears going into the water? I wish so bad we could get some more angles on this, or a follow-up to be able to find out what this was. Until then, we just have this strange footage to go off of and what speculation we have at home. There's a wild conspiracy theory that I just found out recently and I love, and we'll mention it a few times in this video, about a secret UFO construction facility under the water. Maybe this drone was heading on home. Who knows? And if you're looking for way more conspiracy theories about really anything, aliens, Bigfoot, JFK, you name it, we got all of that and then some on Top 5 Scary. We really have a video on just about anything and everything you can think of that's freaky and eeky. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a scream, but if you wouldn't mind, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more stories of UFO sightings coming up for you right now. Whew, number 4. Our next clip comes to us from the UFO subreddit, and it was posted by user The Firo, saying, "This video was taken by a good friend of mine on a flight to El Paso, and as soon as it gets noticed, it's gone." In the video, we can see we're in the passenger seat of a jet, high above the ground. And flying around the windows is an unexplained object zipping around at high speeds. Saucer-like object, looking a bit like maybe it was a frisbee that got tossed into the air by Godzilla. Now, it does definitely look like a classic flying saucer, like what you imagine a UFO to be, but not as many people were convinced. More than a few people in the comments section for this one were a little skeptical of this high-flying footage. Several commenters suggested that this flying saucer is actually little more than a reflection of something from inside the plane's cabin, suggesting that if you pause enough and look right in the video, you can see the object's reflection being repeated in the window pane. Now, there are just as many people suggesting that it is a solid object existing outside the plane. The trouble is, we've been given very limited footage and it's hard to tell, and there was no follow-up by the original poster to provide any more details, so we only have this little excerpt that we've been given. Whenever there's a scenario like this, I do like to leave it up to you, my faithful YouTube comment audience. What do you think? Is this a flying saucer soaring above the clouds or just a reflection of some light? I could honestly go either way with this one. I will say it could easily be explainable as a reflection, but I also feel like the object has a certain weight to it. I don't know, I'm directly in the middle for this one. I'm a centrist on this video. It should have been the number 3 point, but it wasn't. Anyway, jury's out. Please let me know what you think of this. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, New Delhi. Coming up next is going to be this clip shared online with the caption, "A weird set of lights above New Delhi." Take a look-see. So in the clip, pretty clearly we can see, yeah, there's some strange lights going on in the night sky above New Delhi. There's a scattering of lights above the city's horizon. Now, immediately your first thought might be that it's drones, which is a reasonable assumption when it comes to UFO stuff. I feel like several videos that come out of little glowing lights dashing across the night sky usually end up being civilian drones. However, the original poster clarified that drones are illegal in India and aren't widespread at all for civilians. And on top of that, the area that's being filmed is said to be in the slums, where it's incredibly unlikely that anyone would have access to drones. The poster added this little bit of context with the video. "I saw this today around 8 p.m. in New Delhi with a friend. It was massive. This cannot be a building, as there is no tall building in that direction, only slums with heights of about 4 to 5 floors, yet this building looked as tall as the Burj Khalifa. There was a moderate wind going on, and I thought, if it's drones, why aren't they swaying? Not to forget, drones are illegal in India and especially in New Delhi. It looked massive in the sky. I wish the camera saw what my eyes could see. It could absolutely blew me away. I've been to drone shows, but this looked nothing like it. Any idea what this could be? Also, I agree. I wish our cameras did just capture exactly what our eyes saw. It would make all this UFO stuff so much easier, and also I would finally get a nice picture of the moon to have on my phone. Now, some people in the comment section on this clip suggested that maybe it was a laser light show, but that's just speculation and nothing concrete. Well, one particularly good suggestion from a commenter that did make me laugh said that the original poster should have ran towards the lights to see what happens and investigate up close and personal, you know? Worst case, yeah, you get abducted, never see your friends, family, or home planet again, but you also would get the ride of a lifetime, and if you do survive to come back home, you get an amazing story to tell people. So live a little. Number 2, Garden Ridge. Our next offering for your entertainment, and I hope your amusement, is this short clip that was uploaded to YouTube pretty recently. UFO spotted over Garden Ridge, Texas. In this clip, we can see a somewhat strange flying object that looks a bit like a cocoon being propelled forward, or maybe even a beehive or something. The entity has no propulsion or trails behind it, which really doesn't explain how it's moving forward so fast. Some sort of anti-gravity manipulation technology that I don't understand. Is that too wild to speculate that an alien has that? Now, we've seen cocoon-like UFOs a few times doing these videos, actually. We saw them a bunch. I don't know if you remember, one of them turned out to be Mr. Peanut, but most of them are UFOs. I'd say after triangle UFOs or little light clusters, I probably see videos of little cocoon-like UFOs like this more than any other kind. So what are these cocoon-like UFOs that keep appearing, and why do they all look so similar? This lack of propulsion too is really puzzling me. Now, the original poster returned after the fact to add a little bit of clarity in the comments. He said the object was moving with the wind, not against it, so maybe it's possible it's something like a weather balloon that has been swept up in an air current. That's usually what most of these clips turn out to be. I would love to see a statistic on how many UFO sightings are actually weather balloons, because I suspect it's probably like 99%. Another commenter suggested that this could be an object heading towards Randolph Air Force Base, speculating that the UAP seen in this video could be a manned jetpack or a very tiny stealth craft of some kind, which would be pretty cool, or even some sort of new drone technology the US military is developing. Now, among other things though, the original uploader did admit and suggest that this really could just be a balloon, suggested that he thought it might be attached to a floral arrangement that somebody let go of. Hey, maybe an alien was picking up a last-minute Valentine's Day gift, or hey, maybe an alien had to apologize to someone, you know? Maybe a probing went wrong and a little flowers was the only thing that could smooth it over. I wonder if they'll keep that in the video. Number 1, the A-10 over Arizona. And coming up at our final spot today for crazy UFO footage is going to be this dramatic footage of a spherical UAP being filmed tailing an A-10 aircraft over Arizona. The footage was filmed by a mobile scope truck recorded by the DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security. The craft caught on camera is one of unknown origins, well, obviously. So why it's a UFO. The U doesn't stand for usual, it's unidentified. Now, there's really not a lot to go on from this clip, as the original uploader didn't provide a ton of insight or backstory beyond the short clip, so we're left with mostly speculation. Similar to the previous clip, I have to wonder maybe if this is a drone of some kind due to its size in comparison to the rest of the craft, which dwarfs it. Could this be an unmanned craft? Is someone piloting it from a remote location far away? Now, earlier in the video, I quickly shouted out a conspiracy which I recently discovered, and I hope we can do like a full video on it because it was fascinating, saying that a majority of the crafts that we see in UFO videos are scout crafts that come from a construction facility hidden somewhere deep beneath the ocean from a civilization that predates ours. This advanced technological facility is manned by an artificial intelligence that keeps it running autonomously and produces these small crafts naturally to scout out the planet and, well, I don't know yet what they're doing, but something alien. Now, obviously, that is a very tinfoil hat theory. I got it from a less than reputable website, but it is a ton of fun to speculate on and would certainly make sense why there are so many sightings of these similar objects if they were all literally coming from the same factory line. And also, wouldn't that just be the nicest, I don't know, funniest little ironic cap to aliens if we're spending all our time looking up, but they've been below us the whole time? Anyway, something to think about. Number 5, the Phoenix Lights. If you ask most people what the most famous UFO sighting in the world was, they might say the Roswell, New Mexico incident. It's definitely the most referenced in pop culture. There's a CW TV show about it that's had like 10 seasons. Roswell is almost synonymous with the concept of flying saucers. But the most documented UFO sighting occurred in 1997 in Phoenix, Arizona, when a series of bright lights in the sky were seen together by hundreds of people. Okay? This isn't just some passing dot, this was something hundreds of people corroborated on. Now, like any good UFO sighting, there's no real concrete answer as to what happened, and only speculation to go on. So let's run through the facts. It was on March 13, 1997. Hundreds of people around Phoenix described seeing these vivid, bright lights, around 6 or 7 total. Now, reports claim that these mysterious lights were huge and big enough that they were blocking out your vision of the clouds, the stars, but they wouldn't produce any noise like a jet or a helicopter or anything. Big, blocky, silent. A few hours later on that same night, a second wave of sightings came over the city, describing a long trail of blinking objects that some said was a mile long and boomerang shaped. They were blinking in regular intervals, orange and blue lights. Air traffic controllers reported seeing these lights, but didn't detect any planes on the radar. And the air traffic controllers described this incident as inexplicable. But maybe the strangest part about all this, maybe just to me, is that the first person who called in the sighting was legendary 80s mullet owner and actor Kurt Russell, who was flying into the city with his son. Snake Plissken asked what the strange lights hovering over the city was, leading to Kurt Russell calling it in. The only thing he got back from air traffic control was, "We don't show anything." Now, officially, the military would claim that this was a test for high-intensity flares, but eyewitnesses weren't so convinced. The governor of Arizona at the time, who was a former Air Force officer, claimed that the aircrafts he saw that day didn't resemble anything he had ever seen in his life. So, what happened in Arizona that day? Was it a widespread enough hoax, government cover-up, or proof of life from beyond the stars? You tell me. And if you're looking for more UFO videos, you already know we have got that and then some. Click on through to the channel. We've literally got hundreds of UFO videos. You could be watching them for the rest of the evening. But if UFO stuff ain't your jam, we've got cryptids, conspiracies, true crime, fake crime, pretty much anything you could want. So hit subscribe, hit that little bell, and don't miss a single thing. But do it at the end of this video, would you kindly? We got way more UFO sightings coming up for you. Number 4, Japanese Flight 1268. Our next sighting comes to us out of Japan. Well, the skies of Japan. It's a video about flying objects after all. It was in November of 1986 when a pilot on a cargo flight thought that he made a close encounter of the third kind. When Captain Kenju Terauchi and a skeleton crew were flying a cargo delivery of some fancy bougie French wines into Japan, when Captain Terauchi claims he saw shining bright lights surrounding both wings of the plane. Now, initially, Terauchi said at the time he thought that this was just US flown fighter jets patrolling around the border of the Soviet Union. But when he got a decent look at the craft, he realized these weren't friends of Uncle Sam. He said, "2 spaceships stopped in front of our face, shooting off bright lights." He continued saying, "The inside of the cockpit shined brightly, and I felt warm in the face." These aircraft in particular were described as being cuboid, I guess they're Borg ships, with jet propulsion systems clustered around a dark center. At the same time that these unidentified objects were soaring by the plane, these objects seemed like they were jamming the plane's communications in some way, as Terauchi and the crew couldn't contact ground control at all during the sighting, as if there was some electromagnetic field. The rest of the crew, however, wasn't quite as convinced by this strange encounter, with the co-pilot and flight engineer believing that the objects they saw were not but strange lights, and agreed that they were definitely unexplained and they couldn't find a reasonable possibility for what they were, but that they didn't necessarily think they were flying saucers. A committee looking into the phenomena claims that it was just light refraction through ice crystals suspended in the clouds, but that doesn't quite explain how the cockpit got warm or anything like that, or where the communications were going. So what do you think? Aliens or ice crystals? Number 3. The Betty and Barney Hill incident. It's sad how many people see a UFO and no one else in the entire world will believe them. You know, not their friends, not their family. That's why this case is different. A young married couple claims that not only they saw a UFO together, but they were abducted together. That's one for the memory books. You know, they say the couple that probes together stays together. It's a fairly well documented case. It even served as the inspiration behind the alien abduction story in American Horror Story Asylum. And how about Evan Peters, huh? Love that guy. Anyway, the real story revolved around Barney and Betty Hill in 1961. The two of them were driving home through New Hampshire when they both saw a blinding bright light flying above them in the sky. Betty started to feel dizzy, and the two of them soon found themselves asleep on the road. A moment passed, and they found themselves parked in their driveway 2 full hours later, not remembering a second of what had happened. The couple claimed that they had traveled to a star system 39 light years away called Zeta Reticuli. The two had connections and were able to get in contact with Air Force officials to report their strange sighting, and would spend the next few years trying to explain their case to anyone who would listen in the desperate hopes of getting some help and some answers. Barney would meet with a psychiatrist regularly who he told that he kept having nightmares where he was being operated on by small gray-skinned, slanted-eyed creatures that would take samples of his skin, his fingernails, his flesh to do with he did not know. So the psychiatrist had him undergo hypnosis therapy, his wife as well, hoping perhaps that something repressed could be unearthed, and maybe they should have left it alone, because what they found was terrifying. When going under hypnosis and waking back up, Betty was able to draw a scientifically accurate map of the star system from memory, creating a map that was nearly spot on to the real Zeta Reticuli. This incident inspired the Air Force to launch Project Blue Book to collect more stories of UFO abductions like this. Number 2. Kenneth Arnold. If you've ever wondered why flying saucers became the default term for UFOs as opposed to something like flying cigars or flying triangles, it has a very large part to do with this next story, which was one of the first big mainstream sightings of a UFO in 1947. Now interestingly, possibly coincidentally, possibly not, this incident occurred only a few weeks before the infamous Roswell, New Mexico incident, so UFO fever was just on the brain around 1947. This happened to Kenneth Arnold, a clean-cut all-American aviator. He was flying a small private plane over Washington around Mount Rainier on a scavenger hunt of sorts for the wreckage of a downed plane, which had a fairly significant reward offered by the Army for its salvage, which Kenneth was after, of course. While he was prospecting, Arnold claims to have seen nine blinding bright flashes of light, flying in a bizarre pattern like the tail of a kite. Described as saucers moving at an incredible speed, Arnold tried to do his level best to assess what these things were from the seat of his aircraft, working out how fast they were moving, taking his watch and clocking from when they reached the peak of the mountain. He worked out that they were going about 1,700 miles per hour, which is pretty darn fast considering in 1947 humans had just broken the sound barrier at 700 miles per hour, and that was an unbelievable leap in technology. Whatever it was Kenneth saw, it was something far more advanced than anything he'd ever seen on Earth. When he'd landed, he told the crew at the airport about everything that he'd seen, suggesting that he'd seen missiles or maybe some experimental new tech. For weeks after, Arnold would become a media darling, being interviewed by several reporters, all hoping to get the big scoop on this. Part of what made this such a defining UFO story for the American people was how earnest Arnold was about his story. He was an honest man who provided straightforward facts, experience with aviation, a mathematical and rational approach to all of this, and very little in the way of wild speculation. Which is a shame, because I love wild speculation. Let's do a little more wild speculating with our last point. Number 1. The Betty Cash incident. In December 29, 1980, Betty Cash would see something on the outskirts of Houston near Dayton that would change the course of her life forever. She was driving with her friend, Vicki Landrum, and Landrum's grandson. At around 9 p.m., the three of them noticed a blinding bright light in the sky. Landrum believed it to be the second coming of Jesus, whereas Betty Cash described it like this: We didn't know what it was, but we knew that it was something lighting up the sky. We all began to feel this heat, and all of a sudden Vicky screamed for me to stop. And when I stopped, she went forward, and her handprint was embedded into the dashboard of the car. And I thought, well, I've got to see what this is. So I got out, I walked towards the front of the car, and I stood there looking up to try and figure out what this object was, and then a diamond-shaped object appeared with flames shooting out. The heat was tremendous. When I reached for the door handle, it was so hot I couldn't even begin to open it. The only thing I was thinking while all this was happening was, are we gonna make it out of this alive? Landrum stated that moments later, a large squadron of black helicopters took over the sky above the area. After the choppers cleared, Betty took the Landrums home and retired for the night. The next morning, Miss Cash said she was extremely sick, suffering from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and intense burning in her eyes. Now, bizarrely, Landrum and her grandson all reported the same symptoms. These symptoms would worsen pretty seriously, with large blisters forming on the skin, and eventually Betty Cash had to be taken to a hospital where she was suffering from cancer symptoms, where she lost large patches of skin and clumps of hair. Now, to date, there has never been a conclusive answer to what happened to Cash and Landrum. What caused the radiation sickness? Was it the military testing new technology? Was it a craft from another world? Number 5, falling from the sky. Coming up first today is going to be this wild footage that was posted to TikTok quite recently. It might have flown under the radar, but now it's blowing up. And if you're into the supernatural and the unexplained, maybe you've seen it on your front page already in between videos of cats falling over. It was posted by user PMESASSO, and it showcases a truly bizarre encounter, and possibly a close encounter of the first kind. In this video, we can see something falling from the sky. Now, it's difficult to make out entirely what it is, but it looks more technological than not. It's not a bird. Looks a bit like it's a falling craft or a drone of some kind that's been shot down. Do you remember that week or two in February where every day a mysterious unknown craft would get shot down, and then the government would refuse to explain or comment on what would happen? Remember how that happened and now we've all just moved on from it? I'm still thinking about it. Anyway, after that craft seemingly descends to the ground below, we see in the sky that a bunch of military fighter jets seem to be in hot pursuit of it, which definitely makes me pretty suspicious if there's fighter jets not even a minute behind a strange, unidentified craft. Now, there are some doubters in the comments who aren't as convinced. Some say the crafts are therefore an air show, and the thing falling from the sky part of it as well. Of course, did they consider maybe the aliens were the one putting on an air show and the government didn't want to be upstaged and that's why they sent a craft over? If I know anything about the US military, it's that they don't like being second best at anything. And if you want to watch a place that's the #1 best at something, it's top 5 scary, and it's scary videos we've got. If you can think it up, we've got a video or two on it. I mean it. Megalodons, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, aliens, conspiracy theories, horror movies, basically anything freaky under the sun or above it, we got 2 or 3 videos on. So hit subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a single thing, but if you'd be so kind, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more mysterious orbs and UFOs coming up for you right now. Number 4, Arizona's mysterious orb. Coming up next today on our list of strange sightings in the sky is this mysterious footage of an orb-like sphere bouncing around through the clouds. This clip was uploaded and posted to the UFO subreddit a few days ago, where it blew up almost immediately. Posted by user Amphion, and shout out UFO subreddit, making my job so much easier every day. The clip is a snippet from a local news station in Arizona reporting on a series of wildfires in San Bernardino, California. When the camera catches something a little hotter, as a pun if you see what I did there, you can see a strange little orb floating around high above the forests. Now, it's very difficult to tell from here, but it looks to be moving at an incredibly fast speed, with seemingly no method of propulsion or exhaust trails to be found. It can even be going through the smoke at one point during the video, which would be catastrophic for most aerial craft, as this area would be far, far too hot to approach via helicopter. Now, a user in the comments added a little bit of additional insight too. It looks very far out from where anyone could be piloting a drone. Looks to be a few miles out in the brush. Any civilian would be heavily discouraged, if not outright prohibited, from flying a drone near a wildfire area, with a possible crash with a helicopter being disastrous. So it has to be something that wasn't supposed to be in that airspace, or maybe doesn't even know where it is. So it's hard to tell what's going on with this one. I'm not sure what any skeptical answers or rational answers could be beyond the usual catch-all of strange drone or weather balloon. The object doesn't move too erratically or non-humanly, so it doesn't seem like it itself is making the decisions. I'm really not sure what this could be, my friends, which means you know what time it is. You let me know down below what you think it might be. Or just tell me something nice about your day, you know, I don't know, something that made you smile today. Number 3, something from the sky. Coming up next today at our number 3 spot is going to be this short, sweet, mysterious clip posted to us on the most reputable source of information on the internet, TikTok, by a user going by the name of Brian Daniel. Gosh, people have the weirdest names on the internet these days. Brian Daniel, what does that even mean? In this short clip, Daniel claims that near his home, something fell from the sky onto the ground below, glowing a searing bright blue, ethereally brighter than anything he'd seen before. Commenters said they'd seen the same thing in Florida where the uploader lived. News reported that it was a meteor, but Daniel claims that it goes much deeper than that. He claims that the next day he tracked the crash site of the meteor and discovered what seemed to be a government operation cleaning the possible crash site, filming some feds standing around with their thumbs in their pockets on the beach. From there, Daniel claims that a mysterious man in a suit was on his front lawn filming his house, and him when he got home, and he didn't look like he was from the housing authority. Eerie. For what purpose? We don't know. Now, as fantastical as this video is, I'm always more than a little weary to believe something from TikTok just because the app is very, very easy for anyone to edit content with, and this video is literally 3 disconnected shots clipped together. I know I'm a man on the internet telling you to believe things, but I think you should always be incredibly rational and skeptical and take everything with a grain of salt, and there's nothing to suggest that these 3 things were even taken by the same camera. Now, the meteor in Florida is real. That happened on April 13th, 2021, so jot that down, that did happen. But the thing that's really holding me back about this clip, and the reason I find it more skeptical than I believe it, is because the mysterious agent at the end of the video is wearing a suit that doesn't quite fit him. I thought they were the men in black, not the men in the dress for less at Ross's summer collection. Bet you didn't know I could go there. Number 2, what's on the moon? And coming in next today is going to be this incredibly weird clip posted to TikTok recently by a user going by the name of Larry Liu. Now, this is one of the stranger supernatural UFO clips I've seen in a few minutes. You'll see why in a few seconds. You'll definitely want to see this. In this strange clip, we can see something filming something bizarre that seems to be orbiting the moon. We can see some unknown objects flying around our moon, getting a little too close for comfort. That's our moon. Is that our own technology? Are these man-made satellites, or are these scouts, drones, or something else not of this world? Now, before we really put our tinfoil hats on and get wild with the speculating, we need to talk about the zoom in and the quality on this camera. I am inclined to believe that this guy works for NASA because he seems to have the James Webb telescope in his back pocket. I have watched innumerable, countless UFO clips for work, and I have literally never seen a clip this high quality. I was salivating watching this. I can't even talk about the alien stuff because I'm too busy focusing on the pixels in this thing. You can make out the footprints on the surface of the moon. You can see Neil Armstrong's size 13 on the dust. You're telling me this guy shot this on his phone? Why is this man not filming every single supernatural occurrence on this planet? If we set this guy up in the woods, we would have Bigfoot, Mothman, the Loch Ness, all that proven, disproven within an afternoon. I need to take 5. I need a drink. Okay, I'm good. Back to the original video. Most people in the comments were like me, solely focusing on the incredible lens on this user's iPhone. A few people suggested that that could be the American flag from the surface of the moon. I find that a bit unlikely, but I don't know enough about moons to disprove that. So what could it be? Let me know down below in the comments, or hey, feel free to just continue to comment on how impressive the camera zoom is. What is he working with there? What am I working with? I don't know. Number 1, crop circles. I didn't need to say it like that. Coming up last on our list of UFO sightings we just can't wrap our noggins around is this footage that was taken in 1989. Now, I know the title says 2023, but if you really squint, 1989, 2023, I don't know, they look exactly the same to me. It might be a vintage, but that just means the high strangeness has been aged to perfection. Don't dismiss it till you get your eyes on it. It looks like an excerpt of a documentary about aliens and UFOs of some kind, sort of like what you're watching now, but bet the guy hosting this isn't even half as charming. In the video, clear as day, we can see two strange, small, metallic spheres racing around a farmstead, glowing bright against the shroud of the night sky. They seem diligently at work, creating an intricate pattern below in the fields. Some sort of circle in the crop, an almost crop circle, if you will. I feel like crop circles kind of fell out of vogue in alien culture, which is a shame. I think they're very cool and fun. They always make me think of the underrated M. Night picture, Signs. I know some people hate that movie, but I thought otherwise. Anyway, I guess our parents were much more frightened by flattened designs and bits of grain and cereal, and we just don't feel the same way. But I, for one, want to bring it back. I want to bring crop circle culture back. Now, this clip is pretty remarkable. Some say it almost looks too good, and there's been a raging debate in the UFO and alien community as to whether or not this was a real clip or a very well engineered hoax for darn near 30 years now. Detractors argue that it's CGI, while believers state that the CGI would be too advanced for the time. I mean, most CGI around this era looked like Reboot, you know? Not to besmirch Reboot, but come on. Well, we probably won't find the answer today to whether or not it's a hoax or not, because only you can truly decide that, okay? The truth is out there for you. Just like only you can decide if M. Night Shyamalan is a misunderstood auteur or a total hack. We're just not going to talk about the Avatar movie.
In 5th place, we have the 2004 series of Spottings. On November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet when she observed an oblong object hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapons system operator in the rear seat, whose name is not public, witnessed it as well. Alex has quoted her recollection as, "We were trying to call out what we were seeing to each other, and to make sure everybody else is seeing it, it's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and our radio calls just can't keep up with it." Now, the majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings, ergo why it's on this list, can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, and it should be noted that military pilots specifically are trained at what they call REAS, short for reconnaissance, and referring more specifically in this case to the art of recognizing aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. On one of the other Super Hornets that launched behind Alex was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was around 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Now, all of the footage that the US government has confirmed as authentic and unexplained speak for itself, since I know we have the clip handy. Around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area, triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for that equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time. Voorhees described what he was seeing as impossible. In just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and defying gravity. I'm not Elphaba. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon during the night and during the day, and it definitely was a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what it was exactly we were tracking? No." Now, footage of this event used to exist, with Gary being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been completely scrubbed from the internet. Just gonna give the Pentagon my usual dose of side-eye right about now. Don't mind me. In 4th place, we have the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in the area. Edward's superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at the airport, watched the objects on the radar scope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of any ordinary aircraft. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working normally. He then called the National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they also had unidentified blips on their radar screen, and saw a hovering bright light in the sky that was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. At this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was located around 10 miles away. Although they reported that they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. Airman William Brady, who was in the tower, saw an object which appeared to be like an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Where have I said that already? As William tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the strange object took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of the National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pierman was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off. After spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects closing in on his position. Pierman observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported that the light streaked off at a high speed, it disappeared on the scope. Meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south where the light would appear to stand still, then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. At one point, both radar centers at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking an object hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar centers at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force F-94 Starfire jet fires from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington, all of the objects vanished from the radar at National Airport. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. The objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m. Now, the government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise. In third place, we have the Go Faster video. The video, uploaded by the UFO investigative group to the STARS Academy of Arts and Sciences in March of 2018, was secured by a Freedom of Information Act request to the US government. The video was taken in 2015 off of the East Coast by an FA-18F fighter jet using the aircraft's onboard Raytheon AN/ASQ-228 Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, also known as the ATF-LIR. I know myself too well. I'll trip over my tongue if I try saying that any more than I just did, so it shall be called ATF for short. It's not the official short form, but work with me here. ATF is designed to allow pilots to track, target, and destroy targets on the ground at ranges of up to 40 miles. It should be noted that ATF is good at spotting, but not engaging aerial targets. Now, this video, nicknamed Go Fast by To The Stars, starts by explaining the various numbers and symbols that appear in the footage. You know, things like the aircraft's altitude, which was around 25,000 feet, and the fact that the ATF was pointed ahead and to the left of the Super Hornet. The readout also explains that the aircraft was traveling at 252 knots and in a 5-degree turn, and the unknown object was approximately 4.4 nautical miles away. The video shows the Super Hornet's weapons system operator repeatedly trying to acquire the UFO with the ATF's built-in auto tracker, which can pick out an object and keep it centered on camera. After 2 tries, the weapons system officer, or WSO for short, shouts, "Whoa, got it!" to which another person assumed to be the pilot says, "Woohoo! Whoa! What the bleep is that thing?" the pilot asks. The WSO later says, "Oh my gosh, dude," to which the pilot replies, "Whoa, what is that, man?" Now, this is where the skeptics would start asking, but Alexa, how is this unknown object different from, weird government aircrafts we don't know about? Well, doubters, let me count thy ways. For starters, the UFO doesn't have any kind of hot exhaust trail that would be emitted by a conventional turbine engine, appearing to emit, no heat on the ATF sensor. And secondly, the UFO doesn't have any visible wings or fins. Through my research, I've learned that even cruise missiles, such as the American Tomahawk, have small winglets that should be visible, and other missiles, such as the Maverick anti-tank missile, still have little stubby fins. The UFO appears oval-like and does not appear to fly nose first in the direction of travel. To quote from one of my favorite films, "Take that, Mr. Doubting Mustafa." In second place, we have the Aguadilla UAP. Jonathan Lace, spokesman for the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, SCU for short, explains that the organization believes the most compelling footage of anomalous activity ever taken was by a Homeland Security aircraft over Puerto Rico on April 25th of 2013. I'll let you folks make up your own minds in the comments, but let's get at it. The video was captured at around 9:20 p.m. on that fateful day as an unknown object flew across the runway of the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla and was caught on infrared camera by a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft, the footage of which was leaked to the SCU by an anonymous source. The eerie footage shows an object believed to be up to 5 feet in length, moving at speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, get close to the ground before seemingly plunging into the ocean and splitting into 2. In a 50-page report, report, the SCU has made notes that no bird, no balloon, no aircraft, and no known drones have that capability. It also appears to not disturb the water when plunging beneath and then re-emerging from the surface, a phenomenon known as transmedium travel. SCU investigators said that the object appears to be of unknown origin after spending 1,000 hours researching the UAP in question. It is claimed that the pilots of a DHC-8 turboprop spotted a red light over the ocean. They then contacted the control tower, who told them they did not know the identity of the object, and then the object's lights went out as it approached the shore. The plane then engaged its thermal imaging camera and went on to follow the UAP. The SCU report concluded by saying that the video is the best documentation of an unknown aerial and submerged nautical object exhibiting advanced technology they've ever seen. They have since called for the release of more data from the Pentagon after the release of the Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast videos. In their statement, the SCU says that they believe that all government data regarding unidentified aerospace objects should be made available to the public to be openly investigated by the broader scientific community, provided that such data does not compromise sources or methods of data collection. Now, a full scientific investigation of such data would be able to uncover valuable information relating to both national security and advancement of our understanding of physics, aerospace engineering, and, our world and beyond. Here's to hoping the Pentagon listens someday and releases that footage. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. They just really need to stop being so cagey about what they release. They really don't release information unless they're forced to, and while I hate sounding like a broken record, they need to do better. And in first place, we have the Chicago O'Hare Airport sighting. At around 4:15 p.m. on November 7th of 2006, federal authorities at Chicago O'Hare's International Airport received a report that a group of 12 airport employees were witnessing a metallic, saucer-shaped craft hovering over gate C-17. The object was first spotted by a ramp employee who was pushing back United Airlines Flight 446, which was departing Chicago for Charlotte, North Carolina. The employee made the flight's crew aware of the mysterious object above their aircraft, and this unknown craft was also witnessed by, pilots, airline management, and mechanics, so a lot of people. No air traffic controllers saw the object though, and it didn't show up on radar. Witnesses described the object as completely silent, 6 to 24 feet in diameter, and dark gray in color. Several independent witnesses outside of the airport also saw this object. One described, seeing a disc-shaped craft hovering over the airport, stating that it was obviously not clouds since the object shot through the clouds at a high velocity, leaving a clear blue hole in the cloud layer, which closed itself shortly after the events. According to a reporter at the Chicago Tribune, the disc was visible for approximately 5 minutes and was seen by close to a dozen United Airlines employees, ranging from, pilots and supervisors who heard chatter on the radio and raced out to see it. Both United Airlines and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA for short, initially denied that they had any information on this sighting until the Chicago Tribune filed a Freedom of Information Act request. The FAA then ordered an internal review of air traffic communications tapes to comply with the request, which, what do you know, uncovered a call by the United supervisor to an FAA manager in the airport tower concerning the UFO sighting. If I haven't made myself obvious by now, I hate cover-ups, so I'm glad the Freedom of Information request was rightfully granted. UFO investigators have argued that the FAA's refusal to look into the incident contradicts the agency's mandate to investigate possible security breaches at American airports, such as in this case. The National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena published a 155-page report on the sighting and has called for government inquiry and, improved energy sensing techniques, because if an airborne object can hover for several minutes over a busy airport but not be registered on radar or seen visually from the control tower, this creates a potential threat to human safety.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically, the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified, along with Report 14, no official mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light, which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951 in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company, until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all of these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, "I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light, but they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professors saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomena. I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Deca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years, and one witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster? headmaster? Or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Starting off, we have the original Roswell sighting. One simply cannot discuss aliens, UFOs, or anything supernatural without mentioning that fateful summer of 1947. Rancher W.W. Mack Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, roughly 120 kilometers north of Roswell, sometime between mid-June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tin foil, and thick paper. The ranch had no phone and no radio, leaving Matt completely unaware of the ongoing flying saucer craze, so he gathered the debris and just pushed it under some brush to dispose of it. This was not the first instance of a flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. On July 5th, Mack drove into Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later, on July 7th, made the decision to bring the wreckage into the sheriff's office in Roswell. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mack brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more pieces of rubber and tinfoil, with the Major taking the materials home. On July 8th, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Hott, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield. FWAF for short. General Ramey ordered that the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a B-29 Superfortress to make the flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that ray wind devices were used at around 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star. After launch, the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. Now, after the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years, until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those he made to the press in 1947, saying they wanted some comments from him, but he wasn't at liberty to do that. All he could do was keep his mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who told the newspapers, the newsman, what it was and to forget about it. It's nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, they both knew differently. Now, while he didn't elaborate on that statement, and I wish he did deny the popular theories at the time of any bodies being found near the debris. After the United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office launched an inquiry and directed the Office of United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from Project Mogul, a military surveillance program employing high-altitude balloons in classified portions of an unclassified New York University project by atmospheric researchers. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly nuclear test monitoring, and instead inform the public that the crash was of a weather balloon. The balloon had allegedly been launched from Alamogordo, Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors for experimental monitoring of Soviet nuclear testing. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible. Yeah. Now, the scary part about all of this for me is counting how many times the government has changed its tale, expecting the general public to believe them each time. Which story do you believe? In fourth place, we have an anonymous report from 2013 from Athens, Texas. A retired military firefighter and commercial pilot, who was also a former astronaut, submitted his account of what happened around 10:15 p.m. on the evening of July 5, 2013, to the National UFO Reporting Center, also known as NUFORC. He reported that he and his family were sitting outside, and when he looked up into the sky, he observed a fairly large orange glowing orb moving rapidly overhead at around 90 degrees of elevation. A minute or two later, his whole family spotted a group of 3 similar objects along the same flight path as the first one. The objects allegedly gave off no sound and seemed to glow from atmospheric heating. He and his family attempted to record the objects using their iPhones, although the grainy dark video was of no evidential use. A direct quote from him reads, "They moved much faster than orbital satellites, like the International Space Station, or airplanes, but much slower than meteors, and did not change brightness as a meteor would upon entering the atmosphere." So, if a former astronaut and pilot has no explanation for what he witnessed, what the heck was it? In the middle of our list today, we're discussing a San Antonio spotting of 7 donuts in the sky. On May 19th of 1952, an air crew flying an RB-36 reconnaissance aircraft reported spotting a series of, you guessed it, several donut shapes appearing in the sky, and were able to take photographs to accompany their incident report, which can be found in National Archives. The crew of 22 reported flying just north of Sonora when they originally spotted the phenomenon, stating that the plane was headed on a 301-degree heading at 18,000 feet, with relatively calm winds for that altitude. At 8:05 p.m., the objects appeared just to the left of the bomber's nose, at a range estimated by the crew to be around 80 to 120 kilometers ahead. The objects were stacked vertically from approximately 25,000 feet to 60,000 feet. And even with all the photographs and drawings, there is still no definite answer as to what was spotted. In second place, we have the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in that area. Edward's superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at that airport, watched the objects on the radarscope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of any ordinary aircraft they knew of. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working pretty normally. He then called to National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they had unidentified blips on their radar screen, and that a hovering bright light in the sky was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. Now at this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was located around 10 miles away. Although they reported that they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. Airman William Brady, who was in the tower, saw an object that appeared to be an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Now, where have I said that? Oh yeah. As William tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the strange object took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pierman was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off. After spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects closing in on his position. Pierman observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported that the light streaked off at a high speed, it disappeared on their scope. Now meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south, where the light would appear to stand still, then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. At one point, both radar centers at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking an object hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar centers at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force F-94 Starfire jet fighters, I'm really getting to know my airplanes today, from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington. All of the objects vanished from the radar at National Airport. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. Now, the objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m. The government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise. In first place, we have the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Yeah, I know I said I'd be talking about UFO sightings today, but this event is a combination sighting and abduction that I couldn't leave off the list. The Hills were a married couple that lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a social worker. They were active in the local Unitarian congregation, members of the NAACP, and Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Overall, they seem like pretty normal folks, right? The UFO sighting happened at around 10:30 p.m. on September 19th of 1961. The Hills were driving back to their home in Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls in Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty noticed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon and the planet Jupiter upwards to the west of the moon. While Barney was driving, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star. Only, it was moving upwards. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty convinced Barney to stop their car for a closer look, as well as to walk their dog, Delcy. Barney obliged and stopped at a picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Now by this point, Betty had dug out her binoculars for a closer look and described seeing an odd-shaped aircraft flashing multicolored lights travel across the face of the moon, believing it to be a flying saucer based off of stories she had heard from her sister. Now taking his turn with the binoculars, Barney thought it was just a commercial plane at first, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction, causing him to realize something was wrong. The Hills said they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly towards Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the Old Man of the Mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long and it seemed to be rotating. At one point, the object descended rapidly towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered at around 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. Barry stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object, which he later said was roughly the size of a huge pancake. And that statement right there just made me hungry. Still using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look right at him. In his report to investigator Walter Webb of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, Barney described specifically that the beings were somehow not human, but humanoid. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message to him, saying, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be bat wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the aircraft. Now, the silent aircraft approached what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. Not arriving home until dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. Now, extremely confused, the Hills said they tried to reconstruct what had exactly happened the night before, but their memories were incomplete and fragmented. Notice I did a little bit of a jump there. That's because we don't know what happened. After sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, zipper, lining, and later noted a pinkish powder on her dress. Now, over the years, 5 different laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analyses on the dress. This wasn't the only damaged items in their possession. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, but didn't remember how. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped, and their watches were broken, and no matter what, never worked again. There were shiny concentric circles, so similar to the rings that you would find on a tree trunk on their car's trunk, that had not been there the previous day. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass, noting that when they moved it close to the spots, the needle would whirl rapidly. But when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. 10 days after the UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for 5 successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she never had before. And after the 5th night, they stopped and never recurred, although they occupied her thoughts during the day. Determined to recover their lost memories, the Hills opted to partake in hypnosis sessions. Barney recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but afterwards he felt compelled to pull off the road and drive into the woods, eventually spotting 6 men standing on the dirt road. The car stalled, and 3 of the men approached the car, telling Barney not to fear them. He was still anxious, however, and he reported that their leader told him to close his eyes. While hypnotized, Barney said, "I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes," a statement he would repeat each session. The best anyone has been able to rebut what happened was claiming stress and sleep deprivation as the cause of what they saw and experienced. I'll admit, I'm usually much more of a skeptic, but this seems pretty dang real to me.
Number 5. Red Eyeball Ship. In January of this year, a man in Spokane, Washington was in his living room when he happened to sight a strange alien craft that caused him to question his beliefs and his place in the universe. In his own words, "Our backyard camera recorded this strange object. We put a camera in our backyard because stuff has been coming up missing. But one morning I had the TV on in my living room as I was sitting on our couch. I happened to look up at the TV and saw this strange object. I went out on the back porch and I couldn't see that object at all. But when I went back in the house, it was still there. I went to get my brother to show him what I was seeing. He didn't know what it was, but he was seeing it too. Then it started to move out in the field, where I didn't see it anymore. Then it started to come back towards my backyard. Again, it looks round with a red eyeball in the middle, but I have no clue to this day what it is. I took a couple photos in infrared. If you look in the center of the red, you can see something. Looking at the photos, it is difficult to come up with another explanation for what this strange unidentified flying object could be. Number 4. An American UFO. Our next tale was posted this year, but details an experience from the year 1980. The witness shared his story of seeing a UFO that seemed to be affiliated with the US government, but he also posits a theory about why the government would allow this ship to be seen by the public. I had a sighting in broad daylight in 1980 at around 9 a.m. in early December. My mom and hundreds of other motorists witnessed it as well. We were driving to visit my father at his work in Beverly Hills and were waiting to hop on the freeway in Santa Monica when we saw your classic silver disc. It hovered completely still at about 150 feet or so for 10 solid minutes. Remember, we were crawling, slow as molasses traffic. We got a very good look at this thing. On the underside was stenciled US Air Force. It looked very official, and we assumed it had to be one of ours. Then, after hovering for 10 minutes, it shot off towards the southwest like a bullet. I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. It was shocking, but I have a theory as to what the craft was doing there and why we witnessed it. I don't know how familiar you are with Jimmy Carter on the issue of UFOs, but he is on record as having had a sighting of his own in 1973. Carter was no flake. He had a degree in nuclear physics and is a former naval officer, retired at the rank of lieutenant, which in the Navy is like the Army equivalent of a major. Rank promotions are much harder and time-consuming in the Navy. Anyhow, Carter tried like hell to get disclosure during his presidency. He knew he was being stonewalled. When you think about it, it's unacceptable that the nation's most powerful elected leader cannot declassify something that the public, the world, has a right to know about. But what I've come to believe is that Carter ordered a captured or back-engineered UFO with official Air Force insignia to fly over a populated area, where thousands were waiting in traffic to get on the freeway, so people would ask the questions he couldn't find the answers to. Number 3. Father and son UFO bonding. Next, we have a story from Nova Scotia, where a young man saw an alien craft and panicked. He thought that no one would believe him until his father told him about his own close encounter from years before. Here is his story. My living room at the time had a window above me behind the TV. So, I am watching TV. I don't remember what exactly. It was about 2:30 or 3 a.m. at this point. My father got up to use the washroom and went back to bed. I got up to get a drink and saw something out of the corner of my eye, outside the window and above the high school. I literally could walk outside my house, take 2 steps, and I was on school property. I see this light above the school. I figured it was a meteor shower or space junk. I grabbed the binoculars. I looked out the window to see if I could see it. I couldn't really get a good look. It was too blurry through the window. So I went outside to have a look. It was not very bright in my small town. I look out towards the school. I see something I can only describe as a ball metal, almost like a flowing liquid metal, but to my eyes seemed like it was taking the form of a sphere, condensing in on itself from time to time and rippling, as if the surface rippled like water. The light from it appeared that way. It was circular, bright, white, almost silvery. At times, it seemed that the light coming from it had faded, and I could see that it was a solid sphere, silver in appearance. I do not know how big it would be. I guess would be the size of a 2-seater passenger plane. It darted from above the school to the hospital in a blink of an eye. The distance was about 1/4 of a kilometer, but on a somewhat linear path. I had my eyes glued to it, and it blinked out of existence. It is the only way I can describe it. I could no longer see it. I scanned around the sky with the binoculars, then found it was above a church about a full kilometer away. Same strange ball rippling like metal. I was outside for, I believe, 25 to 30 minutes. Based on my coming back in between 3:30 a.m. and 4 a.m., my brain could not comprehend what I was seeing. I literally thought I was dreaming or experiencing some kind of hallucination. I felt as if what I was seeing was straight out of a movie or sci-fi book. It was like it was darting around our entire town at random intervals, going from one part to another within the blink of an eye. The distance it traveled from the school to the hospital to the church is in total 1.4 kilometers. I snapped, and for some reason started crying. I ran to my dad and woke him up. "It's a satellite," is what he said. My father enjoyed watching stuff on UFOs and personally believed the US government covered something up about Roswell, but I never really said too much. He told me to go to sleep. I was terrified, for whatever reason. I was so scared after it. I did not sleep for months unless one of my parents was awake while I fell asleep. I really struggled with whatever I experienced that night for a very long time. It was a horrific experience for me, and hard to even talk about. I had extreme anxiety and depression from it. I was only a teenager, just barely. I found myself being paranoid. I did not want to be alone at all. Anywhere, in the daytime, I would make sure I always knew where someone was. I was never alone. I was so afraid, I started saying prayers. I spent the next 5 years looking at everything I could that was related to UFOs. The sensation I had from it. I felt a oneness kind of, but also so completely overwhelmed with fear. It felt as if my skin was trying to escape my body. My spine burned, and the entire time I was filled with thoughts of, this is amazing, and I'm going to die. I need to get in the house. All the hair on my body was standing up. I was sweating. When I got in the house, my shirt was nearly stuck to me in sweat. My father thought I went outside and got attacked and ran away. I was crying and rambling about some craft in the sky and how it was going to get me. My father told me he never saw anyone so absolutely terrified before, that I was nervous and would look out the windows at night to make sure I was okay. I've never been so afraid in my life of anything. My body was telling me I was going to die. My father didn't like me waking him so I could sleep. My mother, well, was not in the picture. My father's reaction is based off of a sighting he had in the 70s that some people in the town saw. He was ridiculed by people for talking about the craft he saw so close to the ground it looked like it was going to land in the blink of an eye. It darted off and was gone. He said it was circular in shape, like the classic UFO, glowed bright yellow, and had a low hum to it. He doesn't really like talking about it. Number 2. Another father-son tale. Next, we have a story from a man who was not a believer in alien life until one night his young son pointed out something in the night sky to him. In his own words, "I was in my home in Almond, Michigan. That time of year it gets quite dark quite early. It must have been around 8 p.m. My son, who at the time was 12, came running into the house, saying there was a UFO right outside our house. Let me add, at this point, I was not one who believed in UFOs. I went outside and my son pointed south and upwards and said, 'Look.' The funny thing was, at first I didn't see anything, but I did notice it was unusually dark. Then I noticed a very dim light. I suddenly realized that the reason it was so dark was that there was a huge craft right over our driveway. It was at tree level and was moving north at a very slow pace, approximately a slow walking speed. There was a very distinct humming, exactly like a large transformer humming. There was a very dull light in the middle, and as it traveled down our driveway, I made out a row of windows around the craft. The windows looked very large. I remember walking down the driveway with my son. The next thing I remember is standing out in the field north of my house, still looking at the UFO, when suddenly it went from approximately 90 or 100 feet straight up in the sky to where it was a pinpoint of light. It just looked like another star. This happened in under a second. We continued to watch it for quite a while when it took off in a northwesterly direction, like a meteor, and was gone in a second. There are a lot of things I can describe if you are interested, but this is the basic part. I don't feel like I was abducted, but honestly, I do not remember how I got from my driveway and then into the field. Number 1. Bigfoot, Alien Hunter. Our final story is perhaps the most insane sounding story I've ever read. It began when a group of friends went to stay in a cabin in Missoula, Montana. At first, everything seemed normal until they looked to the sky after dinner on their first night, as one of the witnesses reported. Right there, hovering above the meadow at almost the level of the hills off in the distance, it appeared to be a triangular shape / sphere shaped like an arrowhead. It had a flashing red light at each point, and they flashed at the same time. Slowly, the craft started turning until it was pointing right in our direction. We all squealed with nervousness. We all convinced ourselves and each other that it was much too far away and that there was no way it could see us. Jason got up and turned the outside lights off. Then, the object turned off its lights. When Jason turned them back on, it did as well. They did this a few more times, with the craft always copying their actions. Then, with no warning, it just shot forward and then came to a dead stop over top of us, and when it stopped that quickly, it seemed that the momentum made the front end point downwards right at us. The group ran inside and hid, with one of them eventually working up the courage to look out the window, only to see yet another rare sight. Bigfoot. The witness kept quiet about this because, you know, one thing at a time, but that night heard bipedal footsteps on the roof of the cabin. The next morning, two of the friends went to the river to fish, and the others had coffee on the porch, but looked to the tree line and saw the drivers of the alien craft. I saw as clear as day what is commonly called a gray alien. Its big bulbous head was peeking out from behind a tree, and I saw its dark almond-shaped eyes and the tiny nose with two very small holes. I'm not sure if it felt me looking at it, but it slowly moved back behind the tree. At that point, the fishermen came running back, saying that they had crossed paths with Bigfoot again. 40 feet into the woods of mainly ponderosa pine, they saw the Bigfoot. It walked step by step with them, and then it looked over at them and realized they were watching it. That's when it started walking towards them. They started running, and they saw that it was walking as quickly as they ran. When they made it through the woods, they got to a clearing. They ran with everything they had. They said it was dark brown in color and maybe 7 feet tall. Its hair was bushy in spots. Most people go their entire lives without seeing aliens, Bigfoot, or UFOs, so the fact that this trip to the cabin resulted in a hat trick is pretty impressive. If this is true, why was Bigfoot so close to an alien craft? Is he perhaps an alien as well? Is he a Wookiee? Number 5. Alien Gate Crashers. Our first story comes from a man in Zimbabwe who was asleep one night when he woke up to see an alien craft that seemingly had no trouble passing through solid objects. This is his recollection of the event. My name is Johan Reitman, and I farm near Feathersdorp, 150 kilometers from Harar. I am 31 years old. On the 5th of February, I woke up from a bad dream just after midnight, when I heard a car go past. I got up and looked out of the bedroom window, which faces the front of the farm. I watched as two cars passed each other, a strange sight, as there are usually few vehicles to be seen, and none at night. One car pulled into my gate, and I thought immediately, oh no, those guys are coming to pinch my new engine on the borehole. I rubbed my eyes and face to make sure I wasn't still asleep. I looked at the car again. It was long and wide, and made a low humming sound. I could see lights at the back, a row of red lights, and a front light which shone high enough to illuminate the treetops. This car or object stopped at my gate for a good 30 seconds and then drove on as if the gate had been opened, and that was it. It was gone. I took my torch, my rifle, 4 farm workers, and my dogs, and we went out to the gate. Despite the fact that it had just rained, there were no tire tracks or human tracks on the road. As we approached the gate, I could feel heat coming up from the surface of the road, a really oppressive heat radiating from the ground. Even my ears felt flushed with heat, and my workers and I were soaked with perspiration. It was about 12:30 by then, so when we found nothing further, we all went back home. It was only the following morning that it occurred to me that when we reached the gate, it was closed. This meant that the car had disappeared through a closed gate because they had been watching it when it disappeared, and the gate hadn't moved. The next day, I sent one of the farm workers to fetch some sheep who were lost in the bush, and on his way back, he said he saw an object straddling the road. By the time he reached the spot, it was gone, but strangely enough, the sheep would not walk over to the area where the object had been. Instead, they divided around it. Number 4, a UFO crash in Greece. Our next report comes from Georg and Panteloas, who interviewed the witnesses of a UFO crash in Megas Platanos in Greece. The following is quoted directly from his report. At 0300 hours that night, shepherds and some villagers observed a small group of 5 to 6 UFOs approaching the area from the north. One of them had an unstable flight and seemed to be having a problem. Strange lights came out of the UFO's fuselage, but without any noise. As an eyewitness, Shepherd Trantos Karatranos told me suddenly the treble UFO lost altitude and crashed to the ground at a distance of about 500 meters away from him. He didn't hear any noise, but a fire started burning the bushes. Trantos was very afraid to get closer and stayed in his position watching the phenomenon. The rest of the UFOs in this group stopped over the accident spot, and 2 of them landed near the destroyed UFO. In a few minutes, the fire in the bushes was terminated. For the rest of the night till dawn, there was an unusual traffic from the ground to the flying UFOs. Light spots went up and down, probably collecting the pieces of the destroyed UFO and any bodies of the crew. They finished the collection before sunrise, and after that, the rest of the UFOs took off and were lost in the sky. Meanwhile, all the villagers had been awakened and had seen the whole operation. Early in the morning, the villagers went out to the spot where all of this had occurred, and they saw on the ground a burned oval shape in the ground, with a cut pine tree in the center, and very small metallic pieces, and pieces of wires around the tree. Some of the people, like Aragus Alavantes, collected a number of these pieces. One strange thing was that at the edges of the burned oval, the fire stopped, like it had been cut by a knife. Some hours later, a team of Hellenic Air Force personnel came into the area and told the villagers that this was nothing serious. Maybe a Soviet satellite crashed or a plane. They took some pieces of the UFO too and left the area. Argyris sent a piece of the UFO to the Space Research Institute in Brussels. That's the story. If you think that we need more information, we can get more, because I have a very good relationship with the people in the village of Megas Plantos. You see, they don't like to talk a lot about this story, because they are afraid that someone will think they are crazy or something. Number 3, an unexpected police sighting. The next story on our list was related by a Lithuanian police chief, whose officers witnessed strange UFO activity that resulted in him having to make the press rounds to reassure the people of his country. As he put it, "I am chief of police in Vilnius, Lithuania. Recently, I had to appear on the radio to explain that 2 policemen who had reported seeing something extraordinary were known to me to be reliable witnesses and were of sound and honest mind. There has been considerable public anxiety about this matter, arising from what I consider to be media hysteria about their official report. Earlier this year, the entire police force was put on alert. The 2 officers stated that they had observed a round, shining object on the main route at around midnight, 10 kilometers from the capital city, near the village of Nemegis. The object was flashing bright light and hovered 20 to 30 meters above the ground. At the same time, you could hear a strange sound, like electricity crackling, they said. The 2 men approached the UFO after watching it for almost half an hour. When they were some 50 meters from it, the object started to move upwards and away from them into the air, then accelerated towards the town. At that point, an alert was put out, and van loads of Rapid Reaction Force police and tracker dogs arrived on the scene, but the UFO had disappeared. We conducted official tests on the area's ground composition, measuring the air's radiation, and took sound recordings. The grass in the area for 10 meters around where the UFO was reported to have been sighted was visibly flattened. Number 2, a Swedish abduction. Our next tale is from a Swedish man who was walking home one night when he suddenly saw a strange light that seemed to instantly transport him to his destination. The following is his story in his own words. Call me Anders. In early March, I left a local election celebration and decided to walk home, about 5 kilometers away. I had a few glasses but was still sober. It was a starry, moonlit night, and I decided to take a shortcut that led over a hill. As I was climbing, a bright light came from behind, which I thought was a fast car. I moved off the road onto the grass verge, and then I realized it was not a car. The light passed right over me, almost touching my head very quick. Then, I found myself immediately outside my home in Lindholmen, ringing the doorbell frantically. When my wife opened the door, she saw that I had a wound in my forehead and my cheek was burnt. The next day, I telephoned the National Defense and was interviewed in detail by 2 investigators. They told me there were other witnesses. A woman cyclist reported seeing a light at the same time I did, and a couple driving nearby saw what they thought was a new water tower with extremely bright lights shining out of its windows. Later, they realized there was no water tower at that spot. I still have a scar on my face to this day. Whenever I touch it, I feel a tingling sensation, and I experience a wonderful feeling of oneness, of unity with the Earth itself. Number 1. A strange sighting in Uruguay. Our final tale of the day comes from a police chief in Uruguay who was out with friends when the sights he saw made him a believer. In his own words, "I am Police Chief Miguel Costa, in charge of the force at Melo, Uruguay. On March 10th, I was driving with 2 friends, Armando and Maria Pasa, along a gravel road near Tacuarembó, when a huge oval disc loomed out of the early morning darkness. It was enormous and gleaming, with yellow and orange lights. I stopped the car and purely on impulse flashed the headlights. All of a sudden, the UFO appeared to hesitate and zigzag up and back, as if answering our call. When I started up again, it was following us. I again stopped the car and flashed my lights. Again, the UFO appeared to waver in reply. We drove on once more along the twisting road, and the UFO stayed with us, always about half a kilometer away. This went on for almost 50 kilometers. That's when the strangest thing of all occurred. We were all glued to the windows, watching as the disc suddenly shot towards the ground as if it was going to crash. It stopped 50 to 100 meters from the Earth, and we could clearly see its round, dome-like shape with a large flat plate underneath. There was a slight ring of cloud around the dome. The top was reddish, but the bottom was a brilliant glowing white. Inexplicably, the new position of the UFO made us all uneasy, so we turned around and headed back to Tacuarembó, the nearest town. The blazing lights of the UFO remained at a constant distance behind us. I pulled in under some trees, hoping to evade it. We then observed a second disc traveling some distance behind the first. They never touched, but they seemed to be traveling together. They seemed to maneuver up and down until clouds started to form. Then they passed over the top of the clouds and lit them up like a halo. Then they faded, getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared at dawn. They had been with us for 90 minutes. We were all speechless, as we could not believe what we had witnessed. I myself have never believed in UFOs, but I do know that this incident revealed something rare and inexplicable.
Number 5, Bonita Springs, Florida. Our first clip today is going to be coming to us from the UFO subreddit, because really, where else? The UFO subreddit is doing more to get alien content out in the open than any world government is willing to, so if they're not going to do it, we gotta let the guys online pick up the slack. This clip was posted to us from user Marcus1640, who had this to say. Well, let's roll the clip though first, I think. I was working in my garage, which is about 100 feet west of this camera location, doing the things you do to keep the wife happy. The sky's clear, and out the corner of my eyes, I see this bright ball getting bigger and bigger. It was really bright and then faded away fast. It wasn't a meteor, and I checked planes live, nothing was close. I'm in Florida, so this stuff is pretty common, but this was weird, and no noise. Now in the clip it can be a bit hard to see, so I'll guide you through this, definitely as well because it isn't black and white, which does take away some of it. But we see a bright light up in the sky that comes into frame, hovers around a little bit, it kind of seems like it's scoping out the situation, and then flies out of frame after, I guess, it decides there's nothing happening. Now OP said that the ball of light when he saw it come into frame was this shining, radiant orange, impressively bright in the night sky. Obviously, that doesn't translate super well, so we have to use our imagination just a little bit, you know, close your eyes and imagine it's bright and orange. Wow, what a lovely shade you used. Now some speculation in the comment section of Reddit had people wondering if possibly this could be something like space debris burning up on re-entry, or a satellite reflecting the sunlight down to Earth for but a second. Pretty difficult to tell from here, but that's the way it goes with the paranormal sometimes. Nothing can ever be so easy, and would we really want it to be? I think we should have to fight for it just a little bit. Fight to get the truth out there. And as usual, my friends, if you're looking for more UFO sightings and content, I have a pretty good idea of where you can find more of it. We've got 8 parts worth of UFO sightings from 2023 alone. If you haven't clicked on through yet, you gotta catch up. And if UFO videos aren't your jam and you clicked on this out of accident, we've got loads more scary content for you, ranging from the macabre and mysterious to the outright horrific and hard to believe. Click on through and find something to scream at, and subscribe and help us out. Mean a lot from old Tay. Number 4, the Netherlands. Our next sighting is gonna come to us from the Netherlands. Seems even aliens can't resist hitting up Amsterdam. Let's roll the clip first to get your eyes on it, and then we're gonna take a quick listen to the description posted by its witness, who's remained anonymous. Just before 6 p.m. in front of the cinema in Scheveningen? There's no way I'm pronouncing that right. I noticed this object. While viewing this object, it almost did not move at all. In the entire 20 minutes I was there, the object floated very slowly once to the left and right, and then twice up and down. The shape remained exactly the same throughout. The size remained the same regardless of whether or not this object moved up, down, left, or to the right, and there were no lights to be seen on it. Everything was completely black, and it looked like there was a smudge in the sky. In terms of height, this is unfortunately impossible for me to estimate. But there were several people who, like me, took photos and videos. The object was visible for about 20 minutes. Now the video we've included was pretty short. In fact, those 10 seconds were all that was in that video anyway. But when that video was posted to Reddit, it was corroborated by a few other sources who had all seen the same thing and posted similar videos. Meaning, this isn't some CGI trick, or if it is, a lot of people are in on this conspiracy. So what do we think this could possibly be? The usual suspect of it being a strange blimp or a balloon is always a possibility, and I've seen enough of these videos now that I'm always instantly like, this is probably just a balloon, isn't it? But it's still very, very weird. So let me know down below what you think. I love hearing from you guys about what you think on all this. Number 3, Phoenix, Arizona. This next clip was first posted to TikTok, but since being posted there has been making the rounds across the web since it's got UAP enthusiasts like yours truly peering their eyes open and gluing them to the screen. Let's take a look and you all tell me what you think, okay? Now whatever is going on in there is definitely odd. That much I can say with absolute certainty. There's something up there in the clouds that's floating above almost menacingly, maybe that's just me, and it's flashing a light brightly, and I swear it almost looks like it's turning invisible over and over again. The thing seems to be slowly moving across the sky in a way that makes it look like it's scanning the surroundings. Naturally, commenters went a bit wild with this clip, speculating like I am now. Some suggested that this could be something like hyper advanced military technology being tested out in the field, which would definitely be exciting, and honestly, more probable than not, I feel like there's a lot the government don't tell you about what they're working on. The CIA themselves even said that they think most alien sightings in the 50s and 60s were just reports of the U-2 spy craft. Others suggested that this could be something as dull as a civilian drone being flown around in the sky with a lighting rig attached for no other purpose than to drum up attention and get some TikTok views. But do you really think someone would do that? Someone would go on the internet and just lie for attention? I don't know. Meanwhile, more than a few people on the original TikTok were very convinced that this was a proper UAP alien sighting and could have been an alien visitor caught on tape. Comment section, I'm gonna toss this one over to you as always. Me, personally, I'm a little inclined to believe this might be a boring one. This could just be a drone, just because I'm not so sure that our alien visitors would give themselves away so easily by attaching lights to their crafts and letting themselves get identified so easily, but maybe that's what they want us to think. So I'm curious what you all think it could be. Number 2, Scotland. This next clip is gonna be coming to us from Scotland. I like when we have UFOs all across the globe, you know? It makes it seem like we're all in this together. It was originally posted on the UFO subreddit as well. I'll roll an excerpt of the clip and then I'll walk you through the context that the user provided additionally with it. Let's roll it. Okay, pretty cool stuff, right? So the user posted, there are 2 objects in the sky moving at a steady speed. They were not massive, I reckon about the size of a Jeep, maybe twice that size at most. Twice the size of a Jeep is pretty big, I think. Definitely smaller than a plane, but a lot bigger than drones. They had no lights, no wings, no windows, and no propellers. They also made no noise. These objects looked much bigger in real life than they did in the video. On film, they appear to be black, but in real life, I would say they had a color similar to a cloud. Not quite white, but not quite gray either. They looked to be spheroid or tic-tac shaped, and they looked solid and metallic. They seemed like they had smoke coming out of them sometimes, but it was hard to know if that was just them moving through the clouds, causing an effect that looked like smoke. In terms of height, they were flying about twice the height of a typical city building, definitely lower than a plane would have. Also, may I just say, as someone who watches a lot of UFO clips, to be able to find one that is clear as day, filmed on a high quality camera, recorded for a good amount of time, and also had a lot of context provided, put this thing in a museum. That is 1 in a billion. I don't even care if these things aren't aliens. Those 3 qualities are more exciting than aliens to me. Now, when this clip was posted to Reddit, there were a few people speculating that these could be balloons, despite the original poster pointing out that they thought the things were emanating smoke, so it's, no pun intended, a bit up in the air what these things might be. We get reports of cuboid or tic-tac like UFOs a lot in this video series, which does make me think there's something suspicious going on if so many people report on similar objects like that, but we still don't have any answers. I hope we get there someday. I know the truth is out there. Number 1, Hollywood. Our final entry for this video is going to come to us from Hollywood. Even aliens like the tourist hotspots. Let's roll the clip and I'll add the commentary and speculation afterwards, because this one's a good one. There's a reason I saved it for the last. Now, the original poster and uploader stated, "We noticed this huge object in the sky just sitting there by the Hard Rock Casino in Hollywood, Florida." Whoa, 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 stop the track, stop the video. Are there 2 Hollywoods? I'm a Canadian, so I don't know these things. Is Florida in LA? You guys have to fix that for me. Okay, moving back. Anyway, the object blurred itself out when we started recording it. It was huge. It didn't do much, but it just sort of sat there and blurred itself out. I have tried to Google to find out what it was, but I'm coming up with nothing. It was my husband, my 2 kids, and I who witnessed this together. Now, I gotta admit, this is one of the most compelling bits of UFO evidence I have seen in a minute. Not to throw the other 4 clips under the bus, they're all very lovely in their own way, and I hold them all in my heart dearly, but this one, oh baby, this is the golden ticket. I'm sure there might be a reasonable explanation for it, but on first glance, this thing looks like the definitive flying saucer. Like if you close your eyes and imagine a flying saucer, you start imagining this. It even looks like if you're watching this thing with eagle eyes that the saucer at one point cloaks, and the original poster mentions that it was blurring itself out when they started recording. Very interesting to me. That would explain a lot over the years if aliens have been specifically constructing their crafts to blur them out from being recorded by cell phones. I mean, imagine aliens keep coming to Earth just for like vacation, and they're getting so annoyed that they're trying to just have some fun, be tourists, and people cannot stop taking photos of them, so they're blurring out their crafts. So what do we think, my ghouls and goblins? Is this recording simply too good to be true? Is this movie magic and CGI up there? You do have to wonder why if this footage didn't set the internet ablaze, because that looks about as flying saucery as anything could possibly get. Of course, maybe the men in black and the higher ups are trying to scrub this clip from the internet and don't want you to see, and maybe I just got the whole channel in trouble. Number 5, Kansas City. Our first video today is going to be this clip posted to Reddit from user "Oh wow, much fun you guys," which coincidentally is exactly how I feel making these videos for you. It was appropriately titled "Weird Flying Object on Security," which is very good. I like when a title doesn't leave room for guesswork. Let's roll the clip. You see that? It's pretty impossible not to. We'll roll it again just in case you didn't. You can see what looks like an alien mothership sneaking into the frame. Now, if you saw that and your jaws open and you're looking for a little bit of context, our dear original poster provided some. There was no sound at all, and it was cold, so no bugs were making noise either. It wasn't as high as a plane would have been. My next thought was that it was drones, but this would had to have been very elaborate because there was 50 to 100 objects and there were no lights. These objects were solid gray with a matte finish, and they didn't seem shiny at all. The best way I can describe what I saw was about 50 to 100 gray square objects that were moving in a grid-like fashion, like silky fabric. The way they moved was similar to Aurora Borealis, centralized entirely within this doorstep. My wife and I were so dumbfounded by it all, we would have thought we were insane until we saw this thread. So what do you think, my noble viewers? Is our fair cameraman insane in the membrane, or are the rest of us insane for not seeing the truth? Hey, you let us know down below in that sweet comment box. And if you're looking for more stories about UFO sightings, I have a pretty good feeling I can know where you can find 7 more parts worth of it. And if space stuff isn't your jam, why don't you click on through, because we got something scary for just about any topic you can think of, and then some. So click through, hit subscribe and that bell, and don't miss a single scream. But do all that after this video, okay? Keep watching this one. We worked hard-ish on it. I worked hard-ish. Alright, moving on. Number 4, Israel. Our next clip comes to us from Facebook. You know, good to have one that's not from the UFO subreddit. Try to diversify a little. It was captured in Hadera, Israel, and it features something truly shocking. Let's roll that clip and take a look for yourself. You see it? It was kind of hard not to. Up in the sky, we could see something that does not look like it came from this world, even remotely. Looking like some beam of energy floating across the night sky. In fact, I'll be honest, it doesn't look much like a spacecraft to me. As far as unidentified aerial phenomena go, this thing is definitely living up to its name, since it's up in the air and I have genuinely no idea what's going on here, and I like to think that I know a thing or two about UFOs at this point. I've watched 35 hours worth of clips of them. Some commenters on the clip suggested that maybe this intense pattern of lights could be something on a building, like a neon advertisement for like a casino or something, which I suppose could make sense, but I don't know many billboards that advertise with crazy cool patterns like this. Looks more like a flux capacitor than anything else. I don't really think it's an alien ship either though. I gotta be honest, I really have no idea what this is, totally stumped. Could this be a sign of another life, something more powerful than we could possibly understand, manifesting itself in the sky? You know, is this a thunder god kind of deal? Is there a simple explanation for what's causing all of this? Is it just CGI? You let me know what you think about this one sincerely while I keep studying this clip over and over again, just hopelessly confused, hoping desperately to get a new piece of information here. Number 3, Montreal. Our next video comes to us from a truck driver from Montreal, which is maybe why I'm including this video out of a sense of some national pride. The clip was posted to Reddit really without much context. The only thing provided is that our sweet driver swears that whatever it was they saw, they were absolutely certain it's not a kite or a balloon, which was going to be my first 2 guesses, so cross them off. Let's roll the clip and see if you agree. Pretty weird, right? You saw it, right? We can play it again if you didn't, but I hope you did. Take a real good look up in the clouds to make out that strange gray oblong just floating along. Whatever is following this driver as he makes his route is definitely weird. It's got no flashing lights or no quick dashes to hyperspeed, but it's not really got the silhouette of an aerial vehicle. It doesn't look like a plane or a drone or anything. At first glance, it does make some sense why you might think it's a balloon. Definitely a lot of people on Reddit thought it might have been a balloon. There were also several Redditors who, when the clip was posted, argued that this was a border patrol blimp, which I had never seen one before. So if you're seeing one for the first time as well, let me introduce one of the silliest shapes we've ever put inside the sky. What did I just call it? A border patrol blimp? Ridiculous looking thing. So what do we think out there, my top 5 scary gang? Is this clip full of hot air? Or could this be a sign of some unknown visitors in the sky telling us that we should keep on trucking? Our next clip, number 2, Rome. Our next clip comes to us from Reddit as well. It's a very short clip, but hey, sometimes the short ones are the best ones, you know? Keep it short and sweet and all that. Let's let the clip do the talking here, and let's roll that clip. We liking this? We liking the roll thing? Did you see it? Of course you did. I don't even know why I'm asking. This one is clear as day. There's nothing else in the sky except for the flashing alien lights that are distracting your eyes from looking at anything else. These lights are definitely intimidating, you know? It kind of looks like the Predator is out there watching and hunting this train. Those little like laser sight things look exactly like the laser sights on his little shoulder cannon. Now what I think is interesting is we've seen a couple of these sightings like these on this specific series. Go back and watch the other old 7, which is making me wonder if there's an explanation somewhere out to be found for these triangular patterns of flashing lights to explain why they keep coming up with such regularity. Drones are what comes to mind as always, and it's usually what comment sections seem to think, because we can make drones do pretty impressive things. If you ever see those displays of like drones making pictures in the night sky, it's possible. But the set of lights don't seem to be moving too much, or at least the train is going significantly faster than they are, which does make me wonder if maybe these lights are stationary, perchance. If these could be lights from the top of a building, maybe off a radio tower or something. Or could these be 3 perfectly coordinated alien scouts watching from up above? Now, some detractors and skeptics suggested that it could be as simple as a trick of the light, or something reflecting in a strange way. Although if you're like me, and you watch the video about 100 times, like I do every time I make one of these things, you'll see it pass extremely briefly behind a signpost, like a single second. Meaning whatever this thing is way off in the background. So what do we think? Could this have been a close encounter of the third kind, or is this train of thought just hopeless? Puns for all my scholars out there, you'll get that on the car ride home. And number 1, Ontario. Hey, what a lovely coincidence, because this clip is also a series of mysterious orange flashing lights moving in a triangular fashion. I told you these are a recognized phenomena, nobody believes me. Anyway, let's let the clip do more of the talking. Roll that clip. Did you see it? Those flashing lights shooting across the night sky like they were on a mission? Looks like an incredibly similar thing to the sighting from the previous video. I promise you I didn't arrange it like this intentionally. That just happened. Movie magic. I did some digging between now and the last point I just spoke about, and in the last 30 seconds I've come to understand there's a popular conspiracy theory regarding a secret alleged Black Ops stealth aircraft called the Manta Ray TR-3, a hypothetical triangular aircraft that some UAP enthusiasts believe to be tied to several reportings of triangular UFOs like the one you saw in these last 2 videos. Now it would make sense, and it's definitely something I want to be cognizant about when I'm making UAP content, is probably, if we're being honest, more likely, if anything, strange stuff we see up in the sky could be advanced government technology more than it would be little gray men passing through the clouds. In fact, the CIA themselves believe that over 50% of reports of all unidentified aerial phenomena throughout the 50s and 60s were merely people sighting the U-2 spy plane while it was being tested and believing that that's what they were looking at. But, you know, if you're watching part 8 of this series and you're still believing what the CIA tells you, I can't help you. But is that what's happening here? Are we just seeing spy crafts up above? It does beg the small question, why would a spy craft whose aim is to literally fly under the radar unnoticed have glowing lights giving away its presence? But I don't know. I don't design secret spy planes. I just talk about glowing lights in the sky at great lengths. Number 5, El Cajon, California. Our first clip today comes from the beautiful Californian city of El Cajon. Let's take a look at something strange that was spotted in the sky that's got the locals talking. This clip was captured and posted to Reddit by user Exporius. Oh, Exporius, that's fun to say. Say that at home if you haven't yet. Let's take a look at the clip first. Pretty interesting stuff, huh? Definitely something that makes you want to take another glimpse. When it was posted to Reddit, Exporius sounded off in the comments and offered a little bit of context as to what was going on. Here it is. 3 black spheres appeared overhead my apartment complex in the afternoon in El Cajon, California. The objects were unlike balloons, rotating rotating around each other and seemingly unaffected by the wind. My partner, who you can hear talking in the background about UFOs, agrees that the shapes were moving in an odd formation relative to the wind. They were also flickering in the sky, disappearing in and out of visibility, not at all like the metallic reflection of a Mylar balloon. The objects disappeared shortly after my girlfriend made me stop filming to go inside. Suddenly, the spheres whipped around about 90 degrees and vanished. Oh, his girlfriend made him stop filming to go inside. Imagine we had the perfect evidence of UFOs, but somebody had to stop filming because they had to go unload the dishwasher. Anyway, Explorius finishes off by saying, "Very strange. I have no idea what these are." And neither do we. This clip garnered a lot of attention in the subreddit where it was posted, getting people chatting about what it could possibly be, although with anything like this there were a fair share of skeptics. Some dismissed the sighting as being nothing more than a flock of birds moving in on a particularly strange triangular fashion, while others suspected it could have been drone. What is a bird if not a feathery drone? So what do we think, my fair viewers? Something worth writing a UAP report on, or was this something a real bird brain posted? You let me know down below, okay? And while I've got you, if you're not already subscribed to Top 5 Scary, now would be a great time to fix that mistake. We got loads of UFO clips. I mean, we're on part 7 of this series. You know we got UFO clips. Storytelling, cryptids, monsters, mythologies, terrible stories, stories too good to be real, and stories too real to be good. Stay subscribed, don't miss a scream, but keep watching this video first, okay? Moving on. Number 4, from a pilot. Our next clip was posted by the History Channel, of all places. I guess technically if a UFO did appear to us, that would be a pretty big part of history, right? Still, it's funny to me that that's where I'm getting my UFO clips these days. This clip isn't some blurry footage shot from somebody staring right up at the sun. Instead, we have a front row seat from a B-320 pilot's cockpit as a pilot over a commercial flight in Colombia saw something truly bizarre that they couldn't explain. Why don't you take a look at this cuboid UAP that looks out of this world. Let's roll the clip. A metallic looking object that's got a bizarre shape, almost looking like somebody's rolling a giant D20 through the sky, comes hurtling into frame. When you slow it down, it does look a lot like a flying cube, so if you were worried about the Borg coming to assimilate us, this might just be that proof confirming that. Now, in the excerpt from the History Channel clip, they theorized that what this could be a probe or a drone of some type for an alien civilization sending out a first wave of scouts before the rest of the party gets here, and this strange object could be one of those drones, trying to sneak on by but being caught on camera. Now, not everyone is as convinced as our friends of the History Channel. More than a few viewers have thought that what that could have been caught in the sky here is nothing more than a balloon, and some strange angles are making it look a lot more alien and cuboid than it really is. So what do we think? Scouts from another civilization coming in to suss out the situation? Or is this clip posted by people who are just full of hot air? I'm getting punny today. Number 3, Arizona. Our next sighting comes to us again from our favorite friend for strange clips of flying objects. You know it and I know it. It's the UFO subreddit. Seeing as how we're on part 7, I think I owe the moderators and users of the UFO subreddit a top 5 Congressional Medal of Honor. There you go. Anyway, this next clip posted by user Giancarlo the Great showcases a UAP caught on camera in Phoenix, Arizona that's got everybody sounding off. Let's roll the clip and see if you can stay silent watching this. Now, it's hard not to see what the original poster was talking about because I'm pretty sure you saw the flashing lights floating eerily in the sky like a beacon. What's kind of funny is that the same day, from the same location, Phoenix, Arizona, another user on Reddit unintentionally recorded another angle of the exact same sighting, or at the very least the same object on a similar trajectory. And in that clip, we can see it pulsating a bit. It looks a little more circular from here. In fact, several commenters across both of these videos commented that they all saw this in Phoenix. So, it's possible that this sighting is bigger than we think, or that there's just not much going on in Phoenix, Arizona. No offense, I've never been, I'm sure it's lovely. I'm not sure which is more likely or which scares me more. Now, I've got to admit, this one's got me raising my eyebrows just a little bit because I can't quite figure it out just yet. Some users on Reddit suggested that they thought what this could be is something being dragged in the sky, with some users suggesting that it looked like something was tethered and this could be a custom drone or a nighttime kite, which, side note, was not something I knew anyone did, but I've since learned is kind of a hobby. I'm now wondering how many years of UFO footage has all just been kites with like LED straps attached to the back of them, because I'm starting to suspect it was most of them. So what do we think? Aliens? Kites? Either is possible, really. Number 2, Metapod. Our next clip comes to us from Instagram with the pretty funny caption, Metapod strikes again. You'll see what I mean in a moment. But I will say, this is basic stuff. Everybody knows Metapod can only use hardened. 0 out of 10. Go back. Do a lap. Now, we've featured clips from this particular UAP or style of UAP before on this channel, maybe the brand or whoever manufactures these crafts, so it's fitting that the caption is Metapod strikes again. Well, this particular thing baffled me the last time I talked about it, and it's baffling us again all the way here, so here it is one more time. Let's roll that clip for you. Now, a quick aside for my viewership who aren't big gamers out there, Metapod is a Pokemon that's shaped like a cocoon, and I can definitely see where this Metapod comparison comes from. That's definitely what this creature looks like some sort of strange cocoon. It seems organic to me in a very weird way, you know? As if unlike a lot of other UAP sightings, this thing is something that's actually alive on its own. It almost looks like it moves a little, you know? Like it wiggles just a little bit, like it's got a little jiggle to it. Are you following me with this? I also feel like it looks a bit like a floating beehive. Maybe this thing is kind of like a Rorschach test. You see what you want to see. Now, the fact that this thing keeps popping up with different sightings definitely has me very curious as to what it could possibly be. Also, if there's any Rick and Morty fans out there, I swear this thing has like the exact same silhouette as the giant head that appears in the Get Swifty episode that asks humanity to show it what it's got. Maybe that's why this thing keeps coming back. We haven't shown it what we've got yet, and nobody has performed Get Swifty for it. So maybe get on that, and maybe we can appease this thing. Number 1, Sean Cahill. Our final clip for us today comes to us from Sean Cahill, a UAP enthusiast and a former Navy serviceman who is a veteran of 20 years, who in his retirement has become a decently big name in the UFO community as we set out there to look for the truth. Why don't you take a look at this clip he posted on Twitter and see if you can spot the UAP hovering up above. They'll circle it in red too, don't worry. Now we get a beautiful look at a mountain range, looks like a Windows XP background, and something very strange floating slowly moving across the horizon. Something flat looking like a disc, looking like a real classic flying saucer looking thing straight out of the movies. Now, at first glance, it's definitely got my attention because it's not often you get UAP clips that are this broad in daylight and this clear in view. I'm used to somebody shaking it around like they put their phone in the drying machine. Now, as always with stuff like this, I like to call attention to the more skeptical side of things because I think that gives us an air of credibility. More than a few people on Reddit suggested that this really could be something as uninteresting as just a plane moving slowly through the horizon, and looking at something like a short takeoff and landing private plane, it definitely seems like it would be very easy to make that mistake, but I personally want to believe that a 20-year Navy vet would know what a civilian plane would look like. So as always, my ghouls and goblins, I'm tossing this one over to you. My gang in the comments, what do we think? Could this be an alien presence caught on camera, or is this just a plain hoax? Plain, like plain, that's a little pun for you. That one's just for the scholars. You're gonna get that on the car ride home.